2 goes out to Zach Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a break, crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Uh-oh, Zach. The narrative is going to have a tough time today because the narrative all week was Tua Tagovailoa. That's what a young quarterback should look like, and the Broncos don't have a young quarterback. But then Tua throws for 83 yards while Drew Lock and the Broncos beat them pretty handily. So now what, Zach?
Man, did this Broncos team come to play today. The Broncos defense got Tua Tagovailoa benched today. Ryan benched. He was not hurt. Brian Flores just confirmed. The Broncos just got him benched. Tua goes out there, throws for under 100 yards, sacked more times in this game than he had been sacked coming into this game. And then on the offensive end, the Broncos ran the dang football to the ground for the win. Man, it was a close one. But you know what? The Broncos pulled off the upset at home.
Awesome. I mean, it's just every time you think you know what's happening in the NFL, you don't know what's happening in the NFL. And so just as you thought, all week, and when I say you, I also mean me. We thought that this was a terrible matchup for the Broncos. We thought that this was a tough matchup for Drew Lock. We thought that a hurt Drew Lock against a team that blitzes like crazy was going to be really, really tough for Drew Lock. And Drew, outside of a really bad interception on the very first series of the game, absolutely managed this Broncos offense well. Pat Shurmur finally called enough running plays for this team. They ran the ball over 30 times at over 5 yards per carry. The Broncos defense absolutely put the smack down on Tua, even though that he looked like he was very in control for the beginning of his NFL career. And so this is what the NFL does. The NFL finds a way to surprise you at any turn that it gets. And so now you have this situation where Drew Lock goes out there and outplays Tua. And yes, the Broncos defense absolutely outplays the Dolphins defense. Vic Fangio outcoaches Brian Flores. Pat Shurmur outcoaches Chan Gailey. Like, there's, you can go down the list. The Broncos just were better than the Dolphins today across the board. But it's always when you think you know in the NFL that the NFL shows you you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And credit to Vic Fangio for an absolutely fantastic defensive game plan. And look, this is the game that John Elway wants to win. This is exactly how John Elway wanted to win in the NFL when he hired Vic Fangio. He wanted to win 20-13. And with a young offense, you're going to get games where this is what you have. You have 20 points, but a win. And credit to Drew Lock and the offense. They didn't blow it at the end, although, man, was it close to being a game that we're talking about how half a yard was the difference between a win and a loss. But Justin Simmons came up huge at the end of the game with that pick. Almost had 2 picks in the game if it wasn't for a ticky-tack holding penalty in the game earlier. Man, Justin Simmons is so good. And Ryan, the storyline, I think, coming out of this game, you think it's Tua and Drew? I think it's a lot of people looking at Phillip Lindsay and Justin Simmons and saying, pay these dudes.
Oh, man. I mean, I completely agree. Look at what happens when you give Phillip Lindsay the frickin' rock. I mean, it's so obvious. Before the game, his over-under at DraftKings Sportsbook is set at 27.5 yards. I said, if he doesn't hit this over, the Broncos get blown out. And they finally gave him the rock enough for him to be able to succeed on the ground. he is a classic case of a guy that you need to feed. You got to feed him so he can get involved. Well, they finally give him a respectable amount of carries. They end up giving Phillip Lindsay, let me see here.
16 carries.
16 carries. I said before the game, you have to give him 15 touches. They give him 16 touches, 82 yards, 5.1 yards per carry, with a longest run of 20 yards. This is what happens when you feed Phillip Lindsay. And credit Melvin Gordon, who also did a lot with what he had in terms of 15 carries for 84 yards, 5.6 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. He actually played better than Phillip Lindsay all the way up to the very end of the game when he could have salted the entire game away. But the Broncos and Pat Shurmur and Curtis Modkins, in their biggest mistake of the game, put the guy who can't hold on to the ball on the field rather than the guy who can hold on to the ball, and it almost cost the Broncos the game. They were lucky to get away with it, but Melvin Gordon also a very good game, aside from the fact that he now has 4 fumbles this year, which is absolutely unacceptable from a running back, especially a running back 2, which is what he should be. And I don't know. I want to give him credit, but at the same time, it's like, how in the world can you fumble in that situation? So, good game for most of it, but super unclutch moment.
This was the game that the Broncos wanted when they built this team. This was what Pat Shurmur wanted. This is what John Elway wanted. This is what Vic Fangio wanted, especially with a young quarterback. This is why you went out and got Melvin Gordon, because you know what, Ryan? The Broncos were never going to give Phillip Lindsay 31 carries in a game. You bring Melvin Gordon in, and they're comfortable going 16 to Phil, 15 to Melvin Gordon, and look at how they both played. Melvin Gordon, 84 yards on 15 carries, 5.6 yards per average. He had some big runs and also didn't have negative runs. Phillip Lindsay, exact same thing, 82 yards on 16 carries, 5.1 yards per average. This is how this team was supposed to be designed. And then on top of that, what you were able to do, Ryan, on top of that was you were able to get Drew Lock on the move. You were able to get Drew Lock moving, which is what we've been saying he needs. And you know what? When Pat Shurmur broke down half the field, so Drew Lock didn't have to read the field. He was reading 1 or 2 reads on every single play, moving, using his legs when he needed to, had a big run for 14 yards and a first down earlier in the game, then had another one in the game. This is what the Broncos offense is supposed to look like. This is kind of what we saw the Broncos offense look like down the end of the stretch last year, Ryan. And that's where Drew Lock succeeded. And this was a perfect game plan in terms of, what we wanted to see. Now, you got to put up more than 20 points. The defense, in my opinion, won this game for the Broncos, but 189 rushing yards, Ryan. Credit to everyone on that running game, including Pat Shurmur for calling run after run after run, and he stuck to it. So credit to him.
Also credit to Breckenridge Brewery. I'm sipping on my Broncos Country Hoppy Pale Ale right now. It is delicious. Anyways, Zach, we always start with our biggest takeaways, and we've kind of rambled here for a second, but my biggest takeaway from this game is my favorite takeaway from any game so far this year, which is that I think Pat Shurmur has finally figured out a little something as to how to call plays for Drew Lock. You saw Drew Lock getting under center more today, play action more today, out of the pocket more today, a lot more safe reads for Drew Lock today, some easy dump offs for big yardage today. I just loved, I've ripped Pat Shurmur over and over again this year, and I absolutely loved the game he called today. Now it's only 20 points. It should have been 27 if Melvin Gordon knew how to hold on to a football. But 20 points it was a really efficient 20 points. The Broncos possessed the ball. They moved the ball. They converted third downs. They did all the things that I don't think they've done a good job of this year. And so, in my mind, in the same way that I'm giving them a little more credit in week 1 for the fact that they should have scored a touchdown there at first and goal from the 1 yard line, even though they didn't. I'm also going to give them credit in my mind for 27 points today, because that's what they should have had. At least, it's not Pat Shurmur's fault necessarily, that they didn't score 27 points. So I thought they called a really good game today. Pat Shurmur called a good game. Drew Lock executed a good game. The running backs ran a good game. The offensive line blocked a good game. I thought there was a breakthrough there from Pat Shurmur in the offense.
Yeah, there was, and we see this breakdown from the Broncos. Drew Lock dropped back to pass 31 times, and they ran the ball 32 times. That is how it is done. When we say, this should be a run-first team with the way they're built and the way they succeed, that doesn't mean that they have to run the ball 50 times and only drop back 20 times. This is modern-day NFL. We understand what that means, and that means about half and half. And look how it worked out. I loved the RPO call that Drew had, the read option, and then also the way he executed it. That was great. And you know what? You can do those plays even when your quarterback has bruised ribs. You can do that when you're running for over 5 yards per carry and there's a legitimate threat on the ground. The Broncos had it today, and that got them the win. Ryan, the great thing about it is it didn't matter if they had 27 points or 20 because the defense balled out, and the defense held them to 13 points. And I am very encouraged with the way Pat Shurmur called this game. Does he continue it next week? Is this something that we continue to see? If it is, this is clearly something that can work. And this is why you paid Melvin Gordon to come in here. This is why you have 2 Pro Bowl running backs. There's no reason to go away from this formula.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason you would go away from this formula is that Melvin Gordon is averaging a fumble every 2 games at this point, which is just, I just don't know what to do with it because he played his best game as a Bronco today, in my opinion. But those fumbles are unacceptable, just simply unacceptable. You cannot put the ball on the ground, especially in that situation, Zach. I can't believe it. I honestly can't believe he put the ball on the ground there. Like, that is the one time where you are putting 2 hands on the ball and not giving any chance for that ball to be recovered. Zach, a field goal in that situation seals the football game. It's over if you get a field goal there. So what I would like to see moving forward is you can give Melvin Gordon the football, but you cannot give Melvin Gordon the football in big time clutch situations.
Well, and at the end of the game, you saw that Phillip Lindsay was in there for the last few runs of the game. And man, the way he was holding on to that ball was just incredible. I mean, that's something. Phil doesn't fumble, but he was making sure that he didn't fumble. And you weren't going to have a mistake there at the end of the game. And then that last pass of the game, what did you think of that, Ryan? Was that the right call? It seemed like the Broncos didn't know exactly what they were going to do there.
That's a dime. That's all I saw was an absolute dime. Drew Lock's best deep ball of his career, maybe. I think he was supposed to throw it out of bounds.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's maybe a little problematic that the ball didn't make it out of bounds. Or maybe he was supposed to throw it out of bounds and he saw Tim Patrick open and he couldn't resist because at that point his passer rating wasn't very high. After that completion, his passer rating jumped like 20 points. So maybe he couldn't resist himself after seeing Tim Patrick wide open. The only thing I wish that Tim could have pulled away a little more because then Drew probably would have ended with over 300 yards passing and a touchdown.
Yeah, Ryan, it was the opposite of the Brett Rippon interception when he was trying to throw it out of bounds against the Jets and didn't get it out of bounds. This was the opposite. It was no, throw it out of bounds, but he gets the completion, and it does really help his numbers. I did think Tim was going to take it in for the touchdown, and then Drew was just going to have a pretty darn good game statistically.
What do you think of Drew Lock's game? Let's talk about it because it's very obvious that he was better than Tua in this game, more than 3 times the passing yards than Tua. Of course, Tua ends up getting the touchdown pass off of Drew Lock's early turnover, and so he gets that. Drew doesn't end up throwing for a touchdown just because the Broncos ran the ball so darn well, especially in the red zone, which is what you brought in Melvin Gordon for. So credit to Melvin Gordon for that. 2 very good red zone touchdowns for him. What do you make of Drew Lock's game? Because this is definitely the best game he's played in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely the best game he's played in a few weeks. And Ryan, I'm not as sold on this game as you are, to be honest. Did he outplay Tua? Yes, but I have to give a huge props to the running game and to the offensive line. Because you know what? Tua back there, and props to the Broncos defense for making Tua look so frazzled. He was frazzled. He was getting pressured left and right. The Broncos offensive line, and Drew had something to do with this, but it's not just like Drew was running away from everything. The Broncos offensive line played a very good game against this Miami defense. And you know what? Drew Lock did enough. Was this a game where if the Broncos don't have 180 rushing yards and the defense playing lights out, that the Broncos win if Drew plays this sort of game? No, probably not. But you know what? Drew Lock didn't blow the game. That first interception, or the only interception he threw, was brutal, inexcusable, terrible. There was just no excuse for that. It was not fluky at all. But then what he did the rest of the game was he managed it, and he made the plays that needed to be played. Some big gains there. 41 yards to Tim Patrick. He was making the plays that need to be made. So what I saw was you can win with Drew Lock, and Drew Lock did what needed to be done. But did I see a transcendent game where now I'm saying he's, of course, the future? No, I didn't. But you know what? This is a step in the right direction, Ryan. This is a step that we needed to see from Drew Lock. One of the things I wanted to see from Drew Lock the final 7 games of this season was consistency and good play. I said I wanted to see him at the 60% mark at minimum. Well, you know what that last completion on that throw to Tim Patrick did? It took him to 60% completion. So you know what? He hit the bare minimums today. Of course, one of my other things was I want to see more touchdowns and interceptions. We didn't see that today, but you know what? I think a win can take up for that. And, you know, we'll just do baby steps. So I thought this was baby steps for Drew Lock today, but he got the win at home, which is the most important thing.
And the truth is, you know, Drew didn't necessarily have very many opportunities to throw touchdowns, and that's not a bad thing in this game because they ran the ball really well in the red zone, and so you just take that and run with it. It's why stats, you know, require a podcast afterwards to talk about them, because it's not as if Drew squandered opportunities to throw touchdowns. I actually can't even, correct me if I'm wrong, did he have a throw that was into the end zone all game?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. So again, obviously you'd like to see him throw touchdowns, but if you're going to run for touchdowns, and again, they should have run for another touchdown if Melvin didn't fumble the ball. So they should have had 3 rushing touchdowns on the game. You don't take away that from Drew, in my opinion. Connor Lehman here says Tua didn't finish the game, so comparing yards is weird. Well, Tua got benched.
When Tua left, Drew had more passing yards.
Again, yeah, exactly. And also Tua got benched. Oh, we lost Zach there for a second. So, there he is. What were you going to say?
Exactly. Tua got benched. And even if you take off that last play from Drew, which was 60, 70 yards, Drew still had way more yards than Tua.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he would have almost tripled Tua's yards before that last throw. Tua got benched. It wasn't a situation where he got hurt. And Connor Lehman said, I thought he was hurt, but Brian Flores after the game said he wasn't hurt. He was benched. And
that would have been a very easy excuse for Brian Flores to say, yeah, he was hurt just a little bit. He's going to play next week, but that's why we pulled him. Nope. He did not give his rookie that. He did not give him the easy way out. That's some tough love right there.
I love that Drew managed the football game. He made a couple big plays. He made a couple big plays with his feet, which was a big conversation this week because of all the Josh Allen comparisons. Oh, well, Josh Allen is making all those plays with his feet when he was a rookie, and that's very true. But I love that Drew went out there and made some plays with his feet today too. 2 carries for 23 yards, 11.5 yards per carry, 2 first downs when he got out there. Or actually, one of them was 9 yards on first down. Love to see that. And I really like the way Drew played after that interception. I even tweeted it. I tweeted it after his interception. I said, it looks like Drew is playing like he's permanently rattled. And that's what I thought. I was so worried because the Dolphins brought a 4-man rush on that first interception, and Drew threw the ball like he was under pressure when really he wasn't. And honestly, if he waits a half a beat longer, Tim Patrick gets behind Xavier Howard, and he's able to make that throw probably to an open Tim Patrick. So I was when he threw that pick, I said, oh, man, this is ugly. Because he threw a pick. It looked like he was seeing ghosts on that pick. After that, he drags himself off the turf and brings back a very good performance from there on out. And I thought that this was a breakthrough game for Drew Lock, just in terms of bouncing back from a negative and going and leading the team. And I think that as we look forward, we might look back on this game and say that was a turning point for Drew. He threw that pick. It was ugly. It was brutal. He had no reason to throw that pick. And then the rest of the game, he went out there and managed the football game. And I think if he goes out and has games like he had today, where if you take away that interception and he ends up, you don't even have to take away the interception. If he goes out there and plays like they do today and they win football games, we're probably at the end of the year going to be saying Drew Lock is coming back for another year.
Yeah, because they're winning football games. Now, Ryan, what if they're putting up 20 points? Because we've seen this Broncos defense hold teams and have incredible games. They had an incredible game against the New England Patriots where they held them to 12 points. And then we've seen the defense come out and give up back-to-back 30-point games. And this offense today, even if Melvin holds on to the ball and gets in the end zone, we're talking about 27 points. That's not enough to get it done. So we heard Drew after the Broncos comeback. He really pointed it out and said, you guys all doubted us. Maybe we're just figuring it out right now. Well, then they come out and have a couple of dud games after that. Well, now we need to build off of this. And when I'm saying build off, Ryan, I'm talking baby steps again. This was a good baby step for Drew. And I don't say that in a bad way. I mean it in a good way. He's taking positive steps forward. And I loved that he responded well after that first interception. Because, Ryan, you're 100% right. Things could have gone down the tank easily. He could have had another interception before the end of the quarter, and at halftime, there's a legitimate conversation that Drew Lock has thrown 7 interceptions in the past, 6 quarters. Is it really time to bring in Brett Rippon? But Drew bounced back, and so tons of credit to him. So can we see another baby step next week of either some passing touchdowns, and whether that's Pat Shurmur saying, yeah, now we trust you, Drew. Now you can throw those balls into the end zone that we didn't do last week, or just the no interceptions. So I'm encouraged after this game. I'm encouraged by the way the defense played. I'm encouraged by the way Drew Lock bounced back. And I'm encouraged by this running game, which this is what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact stat that I tweeted out a couple weeks ago, Zach, but I think it was the Broncos have gone over 27 points or more 8 times since 2017, and Drew Lock's been the quarterback for 4 of them. I think that's what the stat was. Might be more. I can't remember. But if Melvin Gordon doesn't fumble, we're talking about 9, I think, since 2017. So again, not perfect for Drew Lock. Give this team a chance to score points every week, in my opinion. And he has to grow up. He has to make progression. I think there's no way you can look at last week to this week and say that he didn't learn from mistakes and make a little progression over this last week.
He did. He absolutely grew, because last week, you know what he did? He made a mistake, and then he tried to make up for it, and he made another mistake. Drew Lock didn't hit on deep balls today, except for that last one, which I think, I don't think anyone's taking that very seriously, but he didn't hit deep balls, but he hit the medium plays that needed to be hit. The 41-yard pass, he had some strikes there. And Ryan, that first 3rd down completion to KJ Hamler was huge, because that was coming off an interception and a 3-and-out. And what the Broncos did, they easily could have gone 3-and-out there. And I think that would have changed the entire game. Instead, he picks up that first down with the strike to KJ in the middle of the field. And then the Broncos go down and get a touchdown, tie the game up. That right there could very well be the play of the game on the offensive side. And that was all credit to Drew, because what have we seen the past pretty much this whole season? 3rd and longs. And we've been told this from Vic, from Drew, from Pat Shurmur. If we get in 3rd and long, we're done. Essentially that's what we heard. And Drew Lock said, not so fast today. That was a huge play for the Broncos. And that was after the interception. So that was very, very good on Drew, because things did not start good on that drive. And he came back and made the play that really needed to be made.
All right, I want to give a shout out to Breckenridge Brewery, who is the presenting sponsor of our DNVR Broncos post-game shows. We really appreciate them. Broncos Country Hoppy Pale Ale, delicious. And also, just whatever beer you want. Damn good beers, of course. You've got a few more
Oh, it looks like we lost Ryan there. Sorry about that. But Ryan was saying that we have maybe a little bit of time to get your WGT golf in. So make sure to get on that and get some Breckenridge Brewery beers as well. And Ryan, I want to go to the king of the game, hand out some helmet stickers. But before we get to king of the game, because I want to wait till Ryan is back on, I want to give some helmet stickers out. And I have to start with what I think is the key of the game here. And that is you have the running game. So some helmet stickers to Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, because he had a fantastic game outside of the fumble, which you can't discount. Phillip Lindsay gets a helmet sticker. And Ryan, since we have you back, I want to hand out the king of the game, because we're going to the other side of the football. One Justin Simmons, baby.
Put the crown on him. Should have had 2 interceptions if it weren't for a garbage holding call in which AJ Boye got like a pinch of the jersey on Grant. Justin Simmons, 7 tackles, 6 solo tackles, and the game-clinching interception. This could have gone to Phillip Lindsay, maybe Drew Lock, maybe Melvin Gordon. Actually, not maybe. If Melvin Gordon doesn't fumble, he gets this. He gets this easily. But unfortunately, he didn't. He did fumble. So there you go. Justin Simmons with the game-clinching interception, the king of the game. And Justin has picked up his play after a couple not great games to start the season where people were a little bit critical of him. He's definitely picked it up since then. He's back to playing at a Pro Bowl level, in my opinion. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, he's back to playing to a big-time level, one of the best safeties in the game without a doubt. And it's just going to be interesting. I mean, what do the Broncos do after this? Because, Ryan, my not knock on Justin Simmons, but what was holding me back before this season in terms of paying him the big-time money, like making him the highest-paid safety in the league, was he just didn't make those huge plays. You know, he would have a couple of, I think 3 interceptions every season, but they would come first, second quarter. Well, you know where tonight's came? It came with the game-winning play. It clinched the game. It came when it mattered the absolute most in the end zone, when the Dolphins could have tied up the game. And then on top of that, so he had the big play today. He also has had big plays this season, but he leads the team in tackles. He leads the team in solo tackles. He leads the team in pass defenses, and he has the Broncos' only interception of the game. So, I mean, he did it all. He was the Broncos' best defensive player and came up with the play when it mattered the most.
Absolutely. All right, let's give out our helmet stickers here. I'm going to start with Drew Lock. I think he absolutely deserves a helmet sticker for the way that he bounced back and kind of got his stuff together after a tough game last week and a tough game the week before that as well. He easily could have gone down a dark path after throwing that interception early, and I thought he really got his mind back together and ended up putting together a really good game. So I'm going to give Drew Lock a helmet sticker today.
I'm going to someone who I feel like wasn't talked about at all during the game, Ryan, and that's Tim Patrick. Another 100-yard game. Tim came into this season with 0 100-yard games. He had back-to-back 100-yard games earlier this year, and today another 100-yard game. And that last play really was stat padding for him, but he had 119 yards. But Ryan, take away that 61-yard throw at the end of the game. Tim Patrick has 4 catches, which would have been tied for a team high, 61 or 58 yards, which would have led the Broncos. And then you put that on top of it. You give him that 61-yard play because he did make the catch, 5 catches, 119 yards, and the Broncos' most productive receiver today, who wasn't talked about. He was Tim Patrick. He was extremely solid. He did what you needed and did what he was asked to.
I'm going to give another one to Alexander Johnson, who I thought really set a tone for the defense. I thought this whole team played angry today, and I absolutely loved it. There's Garrett Bowles coming all the way from the left tackle position, all the way around to the right side to seal the edge and put, I don't remember who it was. I want to say Xavier Howard. Maybe it was someone else on their ass with a pancake block.
Boom.
There was so many guys out there today playing angry football. Dalton Reisner put some people on their back. But Alexander Johnson, I thought, was the epitome of this. He went out there to deliver hurt, and he delivered it. Just play after play after play, you saw him in there just knocking people around. And I think that makes a big difference against a team like this with young players. They love to, go short passes. Alexander Johnson was out there making sure you knew that if you were going over the middle of the field, you were going to pay for it.
Yes, he was. And that's what he does every single week, and he did that again today. And he's huge. I mean, him with big hits must really, really hurt, Ryan. I don't want to encounter that, because I'll tell you one thing. That's a big boy right there.
Big boy.
Ryan, I'm going to another big boy, at least in my mind. I'm going Malik Reed, maybe the smallest big boy on the Broncos defense. 1.5 sacks today. I mean, Ryan, it seems like when they let Malik Reed go and just say, go play your football, he goes and plays big time football. These aren't fluke plays that Malik Reed is making. He's going inside. He's going outside. It feels like he had more than 1.5 sacks today, honestly, but another game where he comes up big. I think he leads the team in sacks, Ryan. It's incredible. The second-year undrafted rookie just putting together so many big games this year. And when he has a big game, the Broncos come up big. 1.5 sacks for him. We could probably just go through everyone that had a sack for the Broncos, but I'll let you have the next helmet sticker.
Yeah, dude. So he has, let me look at what he has this year. Sacks.
Does he have 7? Did he have 5.5 coming into today?
Let me just get it right here for you. He had 5 coming into today, so he now has 6.5. Zach, correct me if I'm wrong. Von Miller had 8 last year, right? Or was it 8.5?
Nope, it was 8. It was 8 through 15 games because, of course, Von missed 1 game last year.
So Malik Reed on pace to fairly easily eclipse the amount of sacks that Von Miller had last year. Now, we know that Malik Reed isn't better than Von Miller. And Von Miller's value in the run game is really, in my opinion, where he gets the most undervalued. But in terms of replacing Von Miller, Malik Reed has done an extremely admirable job. And he might end up with double-digit sacks this year, which is really a testament to just how good Malik Reed is as an undrafted second-year guy. So awesome to see.
It's so awesome to see. And also, it's not just a feel-good story, but Ryan, it could help make the Broncos a tough decision this offseason, because this year Malik Reed could show that a young Malik Reed can be as productive as Von Miller. Not saying he's better, but can be as productive. And Von next year, I think, is making about $24 million more than Malik. So that's just something that's going to play into the equation. And today, Ryan, this wasn't all on Malik Reed, but the Broncos held the Dolphins to 3.3 yards per carry. They tried to get it going on the ground, rushed 17 times, only 56 yards. Broncos defense was stout all the way around until Ryan Fitzmagic came in, but then Justin Simmons had the last laugh there.
Absolutely. A lot of people in the comments talking about Tua being hurt. Just a reminder, Brian Flores after the game said Tua was not hurt. He was just benched.
That's the easiest excuse he could have given, too. He could have said, yep, and it did look like his ankle was rolled up on, and it looked really painful. He could have given him that, but he didn't. Vic Fangio got after Tua, and it worked. So credit to Vic. Helmet sticker to the coaching staff. Ryan, were there bad plays on special teams? I guess there was a penalty on special teams, right? I guess it was better than yesterday. Baby steps, right? Just like Drew Lock. So baby step. I'll give a little baby helmet sticker to Tom McMahon. And then I'll give a real helmet sticker to Vic Fangio and to Pat Shurmur, because Vic brought pressure. I think in the first half, he blitzed Tua 39% of the time. Tua had 0 completions. 0 completions.
3 sacks.
Yep. And you know what? That's what you do to rookies. And that's also what you do when that's been working on your team. So I'm glad that Vic listened to his team and brought pressure. So credit to Vic Fangio not being afraid. Now, at the end of the game, Broncos play a little more of a prevent defense, not a full prevent defense, but they were only bringing 4, and Fitzpatrick had some time in there and he was able to go down. I understand why Vic did it. And you know what? I'm not going to question it because the Broncos got the win. But maybe if Vic keeps that up all game, we're not even talking about Fitzpatrick having over 100 yards.
For sure. And the last one that I'm going to give out here is to Bradley Chubb. Over the last, 5-6 games, Bradley Chubb has been the number 5 overall pick. He's been that good. He's constantly creating pressure. He's constantly forcing quarterbacks out of the pocket. And he's been getting sacks too. Really proud of Bradley Chubb, who we were really worried about coming into the season, playing with an injury. It looks like he's finally got himself back to 100%. And we're seeing the guy that, almost set the rookie pass rushing record in terms of sacks. He looks like the guy that the Broncos thought he was going to be to me.
Yeah, and I'm going with another pass rusher here. The opposite of Bradley Chubb, a guy that hadn't played football since before Bradley Chubb got in the league before this year, a guy who is not the number 5 overall pick and had more sacks than Bradley Chubb today, at least credited with more sacks. Deshaun Williams up front. He was credited with 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, 2 tackles for a loss. I mean, Ryan, what's incredible about the Broncos having 6 sacks on the game? What's incredible about the Broncos holding the Dolphins to 3.3 yards per carry? What's incredible about the Broncos getting the number 5 overall pick in this year's draft benched was they were doing it with all backup defensive linemen. Now, Bradley Chubb stepped up on the outside. Malik Reed stepped up on the outside, but the big guys in the middle also stepped up. You have Sylvester Williams come up with a big batted pass at the line of scrimmage. Deshaun Williams coming up huge. These guys, it's pretty incredible. You can put anyone in there, and it seems like they come up with some plays on the defensive line.
The last one that I feel like really needs a shout out here, and I don't want to miss him as we go through this, is Brandon McManus. 94%, 95% field goals this year. He missed 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the only one he's missed all year. I'll touch wood because I know that special teams guys are, what's the word I'm looking for, Zach? Superstitious. And so I'll touch wood for him, but he's 95% on the year. 2 more today. You absolutely love to see it. You can count on him. And again, those 2 end up being pretty darn close to being the difference in the game.
Yeah, they do. McManus is money. So speaking of McManus, Ryan, I have to ask, what did you think of that decision to go for it on 4th and 1? Because, I mean, we were this close to talking about how big of a mistake. I mean, that would have let off the pod if the Dolphins get the touchdown, go for 2, get it, Broncos lose by 1 with no time left. What did you think of that decision? Oh, shaking your head.
Amazing decision.
Oh,
fantastic decision.
But
incredible decision. The best decision. Terrible play call. If you are going for it on 4th and 1 in 2020, the single last thing you can do is run it up the middle. What defenses have decided in 2020 is we are going to not let you run it up the middle. We will let you convert 4th and 1 100 different ways except for running it up the middle. And this was a perfect example of that. The funny thing, Zach, is I actually think if they would have rushed to the line and snapped the ball and snuck the ball with Drew Lock, they would have converted it.
Yeah, but easy.
Especially because they only put 4 down linemen. But as soon as you give the time to hand it off to Melvin Gordon, you give the time for the linebacker to penetrate that gap, you screwed up. You could have gone play action. You could have gone out of the shotgun even and spread them out a little bit. There were so many different ways to do it, but going under center and running it up the middle is the last thing you can do on 4th and 1 in 2020. Defenses have decided we're not letting you do that. The Broncos said, we don't care that you know that we're doing that. We're going to beat you at it, and they were wrong.
Yeah, Ryan, there's something that I loved about doing this. Drew Lock was on the field, and you could easily see him say, let's go for it. And it kind of seemed like he was almost looking for Vic to show him that he wanted to do that. I love that Vic put the confidence in him. Drew's a quarterback.
The confidence in him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but Drew's a quarterback. Vic, you got to say no. He's a second-year quarterback. You have to say no. I saw everyone agreed with you, Ryan, on Twitter. But, Ryan, what's the identity of this team when you take a step back? What is the identity of this team?
Defense.
It's winning these low scoring games. And when you do that, you have to capitalize on every single point you can get. You're at the 14-yard line. Look, if you had Tom Brady, if you had Drew Brees, and you can afford to not take 3 points because you know that the next 3 possessions you can put up 21 points if need to, then great. But you know what? We're just talking about Drew Lock being a good manager of a game in this game. We're not talking about him coming out and putting up 21 straight points consistently. We've seen he can do that. And that's what I love about Drew Lock, is the potential is there, but you have to take the points. And Brandon McManus, you just paid him a lot of money to do that. It would have been a chip shot for him. And then no one's freaking out at the end of the game. But you know what, Ryan? This is a fun conversation that we can have because the Broncos won. It didn't really matter. But next time, I wouldn't be surprised if Vic Fangio says, yeah, no, Drew, I like it, but no, get off the field. Brandon, go in and get 3 for us.
Yeah. I mean, the 3 would have put you up 6, which I understand really isn't worth that much, but obviously then you're forcing the other team to score a touchdown, which makes things tougher on them. So I like the idea of going for it. I like the idea of being aggressive. But Zach, I've told you many times, if you're going to be a team that's aggressive, I don't even want my team to have to look over to the sidelines. As soon as they're looking over and saying, hey, let's go. The Broncos snapped the ball there with a few seconds left on the play clock. They were in the huddle with 10 seconds left on the play clock. They're rushed. They weren't able to necessarily get the right call in there, in my opinion. It was too much disorganization. I just thought that if you're going to do that, you do it right away. You on 3rd down. We're going for it on 4th down if it's 4th and 1. And I thought they were a little indecisive there. Because of that, they didn't get the right play call in. Because of that, Drew Lock is rushed. And because of that, the Broncos didn't convert it.
You tell Drew Lock, if we are between the X-yard line and the end zone, anytime it's 4th and half a yard or within a yard, you run up to the line of scrimmage. And if I don't like it, I don't want to go for it, then I'll call a timeout. I'll make sure that Pat Shurmur's telling you to come off the field, but you run up to the line of scrimmage. You know who seems like he would be terrible at quarterback sneaks, Ryan, is Tom Brady, and he is money. You know who seems like he would be good at quarterback screens? Drew Lock, because he's big enough. He can, get the ball over the first down marker. Do that. I completely agree. That is the right call pretty much every single time. Just catch the defense off guard. So I totally agree. But you know what? It doesn't really matter since the Broncos won. Learn from your mistakes in a win, right? Isn't that the way to do it?
I love learning mistakes in a win. It's my favorite thing to do. And Zach, the crazy thing here is that the Broncos are now 4-6. They're still alive. As minuscule as that life may be, they're still alive. They've got a lot of work to do ahead of them, but they took a step in the right direction today. And so while we're waiting for Mace, and he'll come and tell us what people said after the game, I want to ask you, what does this mean for the next few games for the Broncos? What does this mean for the future of the Broncos? They've pretty much played themselves out of a top 5 pick now, in my opinion. And they've also played themselves out of Nick Wright's prediction. Nick Wrong, where you at? But where are you at with this Broncos team? What does this mean for the future?
Well, it looks like it's not going to be a catastrophic season, Ryan. It looks like they're going to hang on and make this thing, decent down the rest of the way. You'd be crazy to say that the Broncos are going to make the playoffs. As Ryan M says on here, don't talk about the playoffs. Well, that's not where we're going. But Ryan, coming into today, it was a legitimate thing to say that the Broncos could lose their final 7 games of the season. Obviously, that's not happening anymore. Am I going to say that they're going to lose their final 6? No, I'm not going to say that because they get to play a Carolina team who did look good today with the backup quarterback, but still, they'll have a chance against them. Buffalo at home. We'll see which way Josh Allen's trending. He's kind of trended all over the place in his young career. We'll see that. Chargers in LA. They looked good against the Jets, and then they looked terrible against the Jets today. So the Broncos could get some more wins here, finish the season with some momentum. We could see that, Ryan, just like at the end of last year. This is a huge sign and a huge win for the coaching staff, because now they're not going to go over. They're not going to lose their final 8 games of the season like could have happened if things went bad today. So I think it's very good news for Vic Fangio. We'll see. Does this guarantee Pat Shurmur's back? No, it doesn't, but it's a good step for him. It's a good step for Drew as well. So good news for everyone's future. In terms of this year, I don't think it means crazy things in terms of like a huge playoff run.
No, and I think it would be crazy to assume that at this point and say, oh, well, this means the Broncos have it figured out. The defense is ready to go. They'll probably get Shelby Harris back next week, we hope. But it's not that. It's not that big at this point, because the next 2 games you have are against the Saints and the Chiefs. So, for us to talk about the playoffs, we'd have to talk about this team getting back to 6-6. Now, do I think they have a chance against the Saints with Taysom Hill as their starting quarterback? I sure do. Because if they can stop the run, they should have a chance against that team. Do I think they have a chance against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football in Arrowhead? I sure don't. But I also didn't think they had a chance this week, or I didn't feel confident in their chance this week. So again, you never know. But this was really big, because what have we been saying since day one of this season, Zach? This season is about Drew Lock. And I go back to my biggest takeaway of the game, which was that Drew Lock and Pat Shurmur found something today. I really feel like Pat Shurmur realized what the formula is when you're playing a game with Drew Lock as your quarterback for winning. I feel like he decided, okay, we're going to have to run the ball 30 times. We can't drop back 50 times. I need to get Drew Lock out on play action. I need to allow him to get out of the pocket and allow him to diagnose the field that way. I need to let him do a zone read and run the ball. I really feel like Pat Shurmur had a breakthrough in terms of his understanding of Drew Lock today, and that to me is really important. So at this point, no, it's not about the Broncos making the playoffs from here. It's unlikely that the Broncos will make the playoffs from here, but I think this game was huge for the future for Drew Lock, and that's what we know this season it's all about.
Ryan, you know what's going to be so fun about this next week is it's going to be Sean Payton putting together a game plan for Taysom Hill, with Vic Fangio not having much to go on other than one full game with Taysom as the quarterback. It's going to be really fun to see how these two go about it, and then on game day, see how they go about it. And you know what? Because it's Taysom, the Broncos could win. Heck, because it's Taysom, the Broncos could get blown out. I mean, it seemed like it took Taysom about a quarter to figure things out today, and then they took off. They beat down the Atlanta Falcons at home, and they had a hand. They handled them today. That could happen again with the Broncos. The Saints could do that. But also, what if you rattle Taysom Hill? What if you do that? Because Tua is a guy that does not get rattled. I've watched plenty of games of his. He doesn't get rattled, Ryan, even when there's pressure. He looked rattled today, and he looked rattled from the very first possession that the Dolphins had. You do that to Taysom, and you have a chance. And then you know what? It would make it fun, because the Broncos would be 5-6 on a 2-game winning streak going into Arrowhead. I would not tell anyone to pick the Broncos in that game, even on a 2-game winning streak. But then it makes it fun for this year. And we've seen the Broncos once after this 3-6 type of start in the past few years get back to 6-6. Certainly didn't end well, but good thing is the Broncos don't have to go on the road and play San Francisco and go up against George Kittle in that 13th game of the season. So who knows? But yeah, this win is more so about, Ryan, this is good news for us not having to cover a coaching search in the offseason. Things could still go astray, and they could finish 4-12 when we're talking about how Vic Fangio is not here next year. But I don't think that we're trending that way at all. And coming into today, that was a legitimate conversation.
All right, we got our guy Mace. Let's bring in Mace. But before we jump to Mace, I want to mention a comment here that says, the pistol, I've been ripping my hair out asking for the pistol all year. They go pistol on one play today, and it's like a 35-yard gain.
Hey, well, maybe they'll try. Maybe they'll try it again. I think you talk about Pat Shurmur maybe having a breakthrough on some things. He had a breakthrough with that type of formation. And I think he had a breakthrough with simply sticking with the run. Now, the key is, do the Broncos have the chutzpah to continue to stick with it if they fall into a deficit. The teams that really believe in their ability to succeed on the ground are the ones that can be sitting behind 10-0, 14-0 in the second quarter, and they don't lose their nerve. They stick with it. We saw some promising things. We saw, you're unhappy with Gordon's fumble, but you're happy with the body of work that he showed. You're happy with Melvin Gordon. You love how the play action worked off of this, guys. I just want to see them take this game plan, these tactics, these concepts, and stick with them and say, okay, you know what? We might get into trouble against the Saints early, but hell or high water, this is what we do best. This is how we help our young quarterback, and stick with it. Just have confidence in what you're doing. Maybe that's where they can build off this game, RK.
Well, really quick, I got to ask both of you, how confident are you that that's going to happen? Because when I see what you're saying, I say, well, yeah, the Broncos had a lead for most of the game, so it was easy for them to do that. Just 1 week ago, they were down 4 at halftime, and Phillip Lindsay had 1 carry in the second half.
I feel confident. I honestly feel like they learned today. I feel like they realized what this team is today. I feel like they understood why they built this team today. I wonder if John Elway went into Pat Shurmur's office during this week and said, look, man, you got to run the ball for my quarterback out there, or else he's never going to have any success. 50 dropbacks didn't work. I don't remember if we ever looked this up. I don't know if John Elway ever dropped back 50 times in his entire career. You can't succeed with 50 dropbacks. I brought in 2 Pro Bowl running backs for a reason. Obviously, Phillip was already here. I brought in a second Pro Bowl running back for a reason. Give those guys the rock. Obviously, they played with a lead, and Vance Joseph would tell you that's the formula. And that's why they sacked the Dolphins time after time, and that's why they were able to run the ball. But I think they learned something today about what works for Drew Lock and what doesn't work for Drew Lock. And I think they can apply that going forward. Yeah,
by the way, RK, I just looked this up. John Elway had 50-plus dropbacks 3 times in his career.
Okay.
Incredible.
Broncos.
Drew Lock's done it 2 out of the last 3 weeks.
Exactly. And I know it's a different era, but still, this is not what your team does best. I mean, we've talked about how we were trying to figure out what's the identity of this team. I think today they figured out a potential identity, and in these next couple of games, probably the toughest two game stretch of the season, I want to see them stick with it, because this is their best shot for an identity. They're not going to win games relying on Drew Lock slinging it around. He just isn't at that point yet. You found an identity on the ground today. Stick with it. And this also, today, it stopped the bleeding for Drew Lock. Now you see what you can build from here. But this sort of game plan, this balanced game plan, a play action game that actually had teeth because you were committed to the run, this is the best shot for him to find the stability that he has lacked. I mean, the passer rating, some of the numbers aren't going to knock your socks off, but there were some big steps forward for Drew Lock today, I thought.
So we're talking about how this is a revolutionary game because they found their game plan. We were saying this all year. I mean, it's crazy that it takes what are we, week 11 into them actually doing it. But what I need to see is them make this their identity for the rest of the season. Just do that because it worked. And now sometimes you may meet an offense that, like the Kansas City Chiefs, where they're going to put up 30 points, where the Broncos had a chance to put up 27 points today. We don't expect the Broncos to win every game from here on out, but let's see if they can do this in terms of see if Drew Lock can do this, see if the running game can do this, and see if Pat Shurmur can stick to it.
Yeah, the Broncos don't play a bad team for the rest of the year. Saints, Chiefs, Panthers, Bills, Chargers, Raiders. They are going to play tough teams for the rest of the year. Let's see if this formula can work. Let's see if Drew Lock can beat teams like he did today. The Dolphins weren't a bad team. They're a good team.
Yeah,
by all metrics. Mace, the reason why you're late here is you were talking to the Broncos after the game. What did we hear? Just out of the corner of my eye, I saw on the TV a very passionate Phillip Lindsay. I'm curious what we learned from him and from the other players and coaches on the team.
Well, certainly Phil was excited about the game plan, but I think the most interesting thing regarding Phil that was said was actually from Drew Lock, who talked about the leadership and the presence that Phil has shown and has really developed over the past year. And even though Phil's not the guy scoring touchdowns, I mean, it's when you see on the sidelines, Phil is, and we saw it against the Chargers and saw it again today. Phil's the guy that's getting everybody jacked up. Phil really, I mean, this is what Raheem Morris said a couple weeks ago. It's true. He's the heartbeat of this team. And there it was today. The offense was kind of lagging a little bit. And who was the guy that injected some electricity into it? Good old number 30. I mean, that's just what he does. And then on the defensive side, it was interesting to hear a lot of credit for what the pass rush did given to the secondary. And you had guys up front talking about how it was coverage that was setting up those sacks. Vic Fangio pointed out that most of those sacks were coming once he got kind of 4 or 5 seconds down the line. And so those are coverage sacks. And that was something that was apparent kind of watching it from up top and seeing the whole field today, is that the secondary, I thought, had its best game of the year. You had everybody healthy. Good play on the back end from the safeties. AJ Boye, I mean, that dude just got totally hosed on some calls, but he had a great game today. And it was the Russian cover element, with the cover buying time for the depleted front seven to get to Tua Tagovailoa and cause some problems. So the Broncos finally, after injuries and everything else, got what they paid for from that back end of the defense today.
Guys, John Elway's he's going, see, I was right on how I built this team. Highest paid secondary, look what it can do. It can get pressure even when you have a backup defensive line, an entire backup defensive line. I paid Melvin Gordon, and we have Phillip Lindsay in here. We're going to run the ball. And look, we're going to be able to win with a young quarterback who's still making mistakes, but he's learning while he makes those mistakes. John's saying, my formula works.
And it did today. It did today. The formula worked today. The formula relies on Pat Shurmur handing the ball off, is what I think this comes down to, because as you saw today, Phillip Lindsay's first carry goes for 0 yards. And I started to worry, oh God, here we go. They're going to abandon the run because it didn't work on play 1 of the game. But they were able to commit to it. They were able to make it work. They were able to go different looks, use the pulling guards, use the pulling tackles, as we saw work with Garrett Bowles later in the game. You have to be creative with the running game. If your running game is just halfback dive up the middle, it's not going to work. But if you get creative with the running game and you get these guys out and you use your agile linemen to go out there and make plays, they're going to make them for you. So that is an important part of this formula. Mace, anything else? How was Drew Lock after the game? Because I feel like, last couple of games he's been pretty down on his spirits. How did he look after this one?
Well, he wasn't like up and dancing. I mean, it wasn't like swagger Drew Lock. I think it was relieved Drew Lock. And I think it was Drew Lock who really just felt like he had some stability around him, and he had some stability in his game after the last few weeks. I mean, if you're a quarterback who succeeded at every level, it's understandable that when you're struggling at this level, you start questioning stuff, and maybe even deep in the recesses of your mind, you're questioning whether you're good enough. And that's why I think I look at Drew Lock's game today, and I mean, it's not something where I say, well, wow, he did well today. That means he's the guy in 2021. No. That wasn't what this was about. For him, it was a stop the bleeding game.
And he stopped the bleeding. Absolutely. Yes. I thought. And to me, the most impressive part of this game from Drew Lock is he started 0 for 6 with an interception. From there on out, he goes 18 of 24 for 270 yards. So 18 of 24 for 270 yards after starting 0 of 6 for an interception. Mm-hmm. That is a guy who is not going to say mercy, who is not going to say uncle, because he very easily could have gone into a turtle shell there. But he got comfortable, he settled in, he made plays, and he led his team to a victory. And to me, that is the most impressive part of this game for Drew Lock. He started 0 for 6. That's awful. He had a pick, a really bad one. He was able to peel himself off the turf and go out there and play like an NFL quarterback for the rest of the game.
I want you guys to be honest with me, and I know you always are, but what did you really think was going to happen for the Broncos after that pick? and for Drew Lock.
I tweeted it, and I'm getting crap for it now from the Drew Lock lovers who forever have taken me as one of their own. But I tweeted it out. I said Drew Lock looks like he's permanently rattled now.
Yeah,
and that's what I thought after that pick. I thought, oh God, he's never going to be the same because he's just rattled forever. Because it was a 4-man rush. He rushed the throw for no reason. He couldn't wait for Tim Patrick to get behind the defensive back. And I thought this could be one of those games that spells the end. So, I'm not going to lie and say that, I thought he would bounce back the way he did. 18 for 24 for 270 yards after that. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, and the biggest play, the most underrated play of the game was that 3rd and 10 completion to KJ Hamler, which jump-started the Broncos' touchdown drive. That was absolutely huge for Drew, because I wouldn't have been shocked right there if that was another pick on a 3rd and long that he just locked on a receiver and it got jumped. And then we're talking about, like we talked about earlier, 3 interceptions before the half, but Drew didn't do that. Instead, he threw an absolute strike to KJ Hamler, picked up the first, and really got them jump started. So I love the way that Drew bounced back from that.
I mean, he was cash money on 3rd and 10 plus after that pick. And that's another impressive thing about him today, is that on obvious passing downs when the Dolphins, had the freedom to bring the house to confuse him, that Drew responded pretty well. I mean, these are small steps, but they're important steps, and let's see what he does the rest of the way. But I mean, I think you can only be encouraged by what you saw today and how resilient he was. And he said he was also playing through pain today, so in spite of the fact that he was able to go, that he did have some discomfort. He did have some pain. So showed the toughness that we knew he had.
That's another thing that the further away you get from it, the less people remember it. Drew Lock was hurt.
Yeah.
I said before the game he shouldn't even be starting the game. He definitely was good enough to go, as we saw. But this is Drew Lock being hurt and going and leading the Broncos to a win against a very good football team. Honestly, he should have led them to 27 points against a very good football team if Melvin Gordon doesn't, fumble the ball away. 75% completions after starting 0 for 6. Like you said, that completion to KJ Hamler on 3rd and 10 really opened up the entire game for Drew Lock. And again, we've been begging for Drew Lock to have a game like this where it just the arrow points in the right direction. The arrow is now pointing in the right direction for Drew Lock. Got to follow it up. You got 6 more games to prove that the arrow is pointing in that direction for a reason, because Drew Lock is the answer for this team. He has to feel this. He does. He feels, I just went out there hurt and got the arrow pointing in the right direction. Now he's got 6 more games to follow this up and show that arrow is not a fluke.
He and the Dolphins and the Broncos as a whole, they were good. This wasn't world beating, but you said 27. Hey, it could have been 30 if they don't go for it on 4th down there, if they just take the field goal in the 3rd quarter. And as a collective, they were good enough to take advantage of a good team that had a bad day. And that's something that, modest as the expectations may be, the Broncos haven't been good enough to capitalize when a good team was off. Today, to their credit, they were. We'll see if they have any more games like that going forward, because late last year down the stretch, for example, against Houston, Drew Lock in the offense played well, but also good enough to take advantage of a good team having a bad day. That's a first step forward.
Guys, and something that the stats won't show was the Miami Dolphins in the first quarter. Their defense at the line of scrimmage was just toying with him. It looked like a cat and mouse game, especially after the pick. It looked like they knew they were in Drew's head. They looked like hyenas just ready to eat and feast on Drew throughout the day. And credit to him, he bounced back, because at that point when I saw the Miami defense, guys jumping up and down right before the play, I'm going, oh no. But Drew Lock, he didn't fall for it.
Yeah.
And a great comment here from Jacob S., who says prayers to Floyd Little and his family. Unfortunately, Floyd put in hospice care today as he is battling cancer. So the whole DNVR family praying for Floyd. All of Broncos country, I think, reflects that, praying for Floyd. The franchise, the guy who many people's eyes saved Broncos as a franchise as a whole. Mace, you can flex some more light on that.
Yeah, because the first common draft was in 1967. First time the NFL and AFL were together for a draft. The Broncos had never signed a first-round pick to a contract before Floyd Little. Now, having the common draft kind of helped that, but the Broncos, it was a backwater. They were not certain to stay in Denver. They were trying to get the stadium expanded. There was actually one ballot initiative that had failed in the course of all this, and you had fans raising money to help kind of expand Bears Stadium that became Mile High Stadium and stabilize the franchise. And so Floyd Little comes in, and famously he said he didn't know where Denver was when he was first drafted, of course, coming from out of Syracuse, and he's an East Coast guy, but then came out here, fell in love with the place. The fans fell in love with him. And the thing is, Floyd Little, I mean, he was a superstar on the college level when he got here. I mean, I guess maybe not to the level of, say, like a Trevor Lawrence right now, but he was somebody that everybody in the country knew when he walked into Denver. He was the first huge, big-name player to go into that locker room and put on the orange and blue. So, I mean, that's why he has the nickname, the franchise. That's why I'm sitting here looking across the stadium and seeing that number 44 with his name in the southeast corner of the stands. And it's also why today Broncos win, and he got the game ball. No one could deserve it more for what they meant to this franchise.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That is very cool, and good for Vic Fangio for doing that. And our thoughts and prayers are certainly with Floyd Little. And then the Broncos come out today and play a game that Floyd Little would be very proud of. 189 yards on the ground.
Yeah,
keep the spirit of Floyd Little alive. I mean, that's this is the guy who, if it weren't for him, there's a legitimate case to be made that we wouldn't be sitting here talking about the Denver Broncos today. So I think that is a very appropriate note for us to wrap up on here. Prayers to Floyd Little and his family. And I'll finish here with my favorite Floyd Little moment for me personally. I got a chance when we were down there for the Hall of Fame ceremony a couple of years ago down in Atlanta. Got a chance to meet Floyd Little, and I was chatting with him, and he said, having a gold jacket is amazing, but my favorite thing is I like to wear my gold jacket when I go to sleep so I can be a Hall of Famer in the bedroom too.
That's amazing.
So that's how we're going to wrap up here on this edition of the DNVR Broncos postgame. A Broncos win. Feels good. Nice to see. If you like this show, hit us with a thumbs up on YouTube. We always appreciate that. And also hit us with a subscribe to the YouTube channel. We always appreciate those as well. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Broncos 4-6. Drew Lock trending up. It feels good to say. It feels nice to see. Everyone have a great rest of your Sunday, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning.